1996. That is the year we're going to talk about today, and it can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people, for many different reasons, whether it's something personal to you or just something in pop culture that reigned supreme that year. Now, the world of rock and roll really blended together with that of the glitz and glamour of Hollywood that year, and when those two worlds collided, well, it brought us back to something that we all have to eventually go to when we get too big or too out there in the world, and that is, well, coming back to reality. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back, music lovers, especially my rock music lovers. So, 1996, that is the year. Great year, might I add. And I've said it before many times in many videos. I'm an 80s kid. I was born in the 80s. But I grew up mostly in the 90s, my younger adolescent years going into my teenage years. And I gotta say, you know, it might be the last great decade, and that might just me being biased because so many great memories. But if you're a rock star, you imagine that dream lifestyle. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll, right? You might not like one or the other, or even any of them. But come on, man, you know, if you're a famous rock star and you can have your pick of the litter of these beautiful actresses or models, you're like, shit, that's got to be heaven. And there's many examples of great rock stars getting to, well, get down with some very, very, may I say, attractive women. There's no doubt many examples of rock stars or badass artists getting with some, you know, very attractive actresses or supermodels out there. Some that come to mind to me right off the bat are Eddie Van Halen. I mean, the man, the guitar god himself, with Valerie Bertinelli. And Valerie Bertinelli was a fox when she was younger. I mean, she's still beautiful today, but she was a fox. And Eddie, he had a catch there. Richie Sambora with Heather Locklear. I mean, they were married in the mid-90s, had a daughter together, eventually divorced. But Heather, she was attractive, and I think she got around her fair share. Nothing wrong with that. Billy Joel, the piano man, with Christina Brinkley, the supermodel, and she, another one, a dime. Very attractive. Paul Simon and Garfunkel. You know, he was with Carrie Fisher. And Carrie Fisher, though maybe an acquired taste, I think she was very attractive. Princess Leia. And Chris Martin from Coldplay. He married Gwyneth Paltrow. They had children together. I mean, these guys, you know, beautiful women. But the one that we're going to talk about today, the man, the drummer, the youngster of the group from Motley Crue, Tommy Lee and Pamela Anderson. So Tommy Lee, the drummer for Motley Crue, was born October 3rd of 1962. He was born in Athens, Greece. Now, his actual joining of the band Motley Crue, he was only 17 years old. I try to imagine a 17-year-old joining a band. Now, obviously, initially, they weren't successful right off the gate, but it didn't take them long because their first album in 1981, they already had a huge fan base and they were hitting the ground running. They were well on their way. The momentum was there, and they're one of the greatest bands of the 80s. So, 17 years old, what I was doing at 17 years old, I mean, this guy, it didn't take him long to get, well, the resources. When I see resources, the money and the fame to have more avenues to do all kinds of crazy shit. Whatever you wanted, pretty much. The world was yours and you could just have all this crazy fun. Me, I was doing that kind of stuff without the resources. So I could just imagine being in his shoes at that age. But one of the most successful bands of the 80s, you were part of it. So no doubt anybody would want a piece of that. You know, when you're famous like that and you got that money, people just want to latch onto you. And you never know what relationships are real or fake. But sometimes if it's just something you want, you don't care if it's fake or not. You're going to get what you want out of it. And that's it. But now the second person in this story, little different. I'm talking about Pamela Anderson. Hey, real quick, can you please do me a huge favor? If you're enjoying the video, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Those are two things you can do for me right now. Absolutely free, cost you nothing. That'll help me in this channel grow. I absolutely love doing this. Lots of stories out there. Rock and roll is full of it. Not just the music, the passion, the reality, the humanity. So many great stories. So please, do those two things for me. Let's continue the video. Now, Pamela Anderson, a little different. She was born in Ladysmith, British Columbia, Canada, July 1, 1967. Her stories, you know, like a lot of other stories, she would go to Canadian Football League games. And it was at one of these games where she was wearing a Labatt's Beer t-shirt. She got put on the Jumbotron. Everybody noticed it. Beautiful young girl. And that's how she got her recognition, and she became a model. It wasn't long after becoming a model, around 1989, when she came to the States, that she started doing covers for Playboy. I mean, no doubt she had everything you needed. Around 1990, after she did a couple centerfolds, she chose to get breast implants. And, well, one of the things that Pamela Anderson is well known for is, well, those two things. But as she started to transition from modeling, doing Playboy, into the entertainment business, she actually got a part on Home Improvement. She was the first Tool Time girl. Before there was ever Heidi on Tool Time, there was Lisa, played by Pamela Anderson. But 2 seasons went by and she left the show. But she got an even bigger break when she got the part of C.J. Parker on the hit 90s show Baywatch. Now, she was on there for 5 seasons, but it was around going into her 3rd season that she would meet the man himself, Tommy Lee, and that would start a very interesting relationship and a couple interesting stories. So we'll start this way. I mean, obviously, we'll just say Pam and Tommy, because that's what everybody knows them as. That is just an iconic couple. I'm not saying it was a good couple or the relationship was great, but Pam and Tommy, who doesn't know that? So they met on December 31st of 1994, and they met at a nightclub. And if you go back and you watch The Dirt or read the book, the Motley Crue autobiography, they talk about it a little bit in there, and Lee, he goes back and talks a little bit about when they met. Obviously, it started with a waitress bringing a shot of Goldschlager to Tommy Lee, and she said it was from Pamela Anderson. So, Tommy Lee, being the badass rock star that he is, when he went and approached her to introduce himself, he did so, and he started out and set up with a handshake. He licked her from her chin to the top of her forehead. Straight up player move. You got to give it to him, man. That guy knows how to. That's just how you do it. I don't know if you remember the show The Pickup Artist. It was a show that took a bunch of guys that couldn't get with girls and just didn't know what the hell they were doing or how to approach or talk to them. And these 3 bomb-ass dudes that are complete players, allegedly, would teach them how to learn how to pick up girls. And eventually it was a contest. It'd be narrowed down to one guy who would be the pickup artist. These guys were so smooth with the way they did it. Don't know if it was staged, but I give them credit because that's how you do it. You go in with balls and courage and show that you ain't got no shame. And that's what Tommy Lee did. And allegedly, after he did that, Pamela Anderson turned to the left or right, don't know which way, and licked this girl the same way. And then everyone just started licking each other. So, definitely a cool way to break the ice, and a cool story to tell people on, hey, how did you meet? Well, this is how we met. So at that time when they got together, you gotta realize, so 1994, so Pam Anderson, she's hot. She is a sex symbol at the time. C.J. Parker is an iconic character, and every dude wanted her. Now, Tommy Lee, on the other hand, Motley Crue ruled the 80s. I cannot understate that. Motley Crue ruled the 80s, one of the most iconic bands, and did great things. But at that time, in 94, Motley Crue had kind of trickled down from that high of the 80s, and obviously rolling into the early 90s with the grunge movement, a lot of that 80s metal music just kind of seemed to, I don't want to say die, because people say that. It was overshadowed by this new music coming out of Seattle, and can't blame me because it was something new, something fresh, and I think a lot of them record companies, that was their intention. Those high up execs, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, they know how to play the game, they knew there was a new sound, and they knew they could put that out there as the new hot thing and just overshadow what was, to them, old, done, it was over with. But all that music from the 80s, those hardcore heavy metal rock bands, the hair metal bands, whoever it was, they did great music. Some of them didn't, but some did. Motley Crue, I say, is one of them because they paid their dues and got to where they are the hard way. And they did it great. Now, that was the time that Motley Crue was starting to lull out, obviously. And so when they met, you know Tommy Lee. He's still Tommy Lee, the fucking crazy-ass drummer from Motley Crue. And then Pam Anderson is who she was. She was so popular at the time. But, their careers were kind of going different directions. But nonetheless, it was a power couple. So, rolling into 1995, just days, literally 3 days after they met, those two were down in Cancun and they were getting married. I mean, that's definitely a Hollywood story if I've ever heard one, and I've heard a million of them. I mean, it doesn't surprise me. These crazy actors, actresses, rock stars, they do whatever the hell they want. And it's not just them. How many crazy people or stories have you had about people meeting in Vegas and getting married, and before you know it, they're waking up the next day like, holy shit, who is this? What is this on my finger? What the just happened? But hey, that's life, man, and those kind of stories are always good to tell later down the line. But in the moment, you might not even realize it's a mistake. You might actually think it's a fairy tale romantic story, which Pam Anderson had said in interviews that's what she thought it was. So the ideal, church wedding, marrying somebody you've been with a while that you're absolutely in love with, yeah, that's great. A lot of girls dream of it. But this can be romantic too, I guess. But later in that summer, same year, 1995, the two were intending to take a trip, just the two of them, on a houseboat. And, well, it would turn out to be an iconic trip. So the houseboat that Pam and Tommy were on, they took it down to Lake Mead. And this was intended to be just a, two-person romantic getaway, which I'm sure it kind of was, in a sense, at the moment. So what they did was they pretty much filmed. They wanted to archive everything they did, their trip, so they could go back and watch it whenever they wanted. Now, these two are in love. They're adults. You got a rock star. You got a hot centerfold actress. I mean, literally, this trip had to be great. Romantic. All that stuff. But inevitably, two adults are going to do what two adults do when they're alone and they're in love. And they absolutely got busy while the camera was rolling. Now, to any of us who have done that or want to do it or whatever the case is, yes, if your intention in the moment is it to be something that you two can go look back on as a couple and just kind of, take it for what it is, that's great. But this turned out to be a whole lot more than that. So now later in the year, October of 1995, Pam and Tommy were doing renovations on the Malibu, California home that they shared. Now, many people worked on this renovation project. Now, they fired a gentleman by the name of Rand Gantier, and this guy was an electrician who was working on their house. After he was fired, he came back, and it was said to be a revenge move, but he inevitably stole a safe from the couple. Now, this safe, in his mind, was holding guns owned by Tommy Lee and jewelry owned by Pamela Anderson. But when he stole the safe, he got the surprise of a lifetime because he found a video cassette tape inside. And to his surprise, when he watched it, what he saw, well, he saw more than just two people having sex. He saw dollar signs. Now, once Rand realized what he got his hands on, he did what probably a lot of idiots would do. He chased the money. Now, this got dished out to a couple different outlets, Penthouse being one of them. And when it was discovered this tape was out by Pam and Tommy, inevitably they sued him. They sued Rand. They sued another photographer, and there was a lot of people they were trying to take down for this, and this was huge. This is way before the internet was around, but it was before what it is today. So it took almost up to 2 years after this tape was stolen and dished out to multiple people and different websites that it just exploded. It exploded, and millions of people had watched these two doing what they thought was something in private. Now again, when you have the camera on, there's that possibility. You got to know it that if you lose that tape or somebody gets their hands on it, something like this is going to happen. And again, it was damaging. And you look at it from two ways. Tommy, the rock star, the guy, it didn't affect him as bad. And sadly, that's how it probably would go for most. Really, the one that was damaged the most was Pam Anderson. And she said it in interviews later. This was not meant to be a sex tape. This was two intimate people in a relationship wanting to archive something that they did in private. And I'm sure that was the intention. But, man, you put it on camera and you got bitten for it. Aside from the sex tape, Pam and Tommy's marriage wasn't going to last. I mean, 3 days, you get married, and again, I'm not saying it's not possible, but you got to think that that's possibly going to hit a point where you don't know each other's flaws and you don't have time to work through it or see if that's somebody you want to even work through their flaws with, because you're in a relationship, it's going to happen. There's going to be things that the other person cannot freaking stand and vice versa. And that's usually why a drawn-out relationship that inevitably turns into marriage works out more times than not than somebody you just freaking met and got married to a couple days later. But the Pam and Tommy sex tape is probably, we'll say, the godfather of celebrity sex tapes, because nowadays there's tons of them. And you don't know whether these people do it and it gets released, whether they say they're destroyed or hurt by it. Inevitably, I think some of them are intentional, to get publicity. Because some of these are, celebrities that lost their fizzle, and they know if they want to get back out there in the spotlight, they can do something like that. I remember Paris Hilton's, and it also seemed very, like it was just two people trying to do the same thing as Pam and Tommy, but it also kind of seemed like it was intended to get released, because she wasn't exactly a hot celebrity like she was years before that. But again, like I said, the godfather of celebrity sex tapes is Pam and Tommy's. But the divorce in '98, they had children together. They're forever linked, no matter what, for the rest of their lives, in their personal life and and something that got put out there that the world will always remember, no doubt. But I just thought this would be a cool story to tell. A lot of people know it, you know. And again, Tommy Lee, his rock star status is cemented forever, and Pam Anderson was a huge star. But when those worlds collided, you've seen what happened, and it started something that, well, will go down in history forever. Is, hey, if you want your privacy private, don't put it on film. But anyway, I really appreciate you coming and watching. Thank you. And until next time, go take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Go for something big. But if you're doing something like what Pam and Tom were doing, don't turn the camera on. Till next time, take care of yourself. I'm out.